concerns about the Chancellor's fiscal plan public.
Well, let's speak to the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, calling for a U-turn then on the mini-budget, but that's unlikely.
Well, the government's got themselves into a real mess here. Since the mini-budget was announced a couple of weeks ago, we've had chaos in the financial markets. We've had an emergency Bank of England intervention to prop up the pension system, and probably the most direct effect of all for people has been a really sharp spike in mortgage rates, where the 2-year fixed rate is often now above 6%, which is the highest it's been for 15 years. And so you've had all of that effect, and it looks as though to try to compensate for all of that, what the government's going to do now is announce a whole series of public spending cuts in this Halloween fiscal event at the end of the month. And, you know, this doesn't make sense to make one set of mistakes and then compound it by making the public pay for ministers' mistakes through cuts in public services. It'd be far better to pause this whole thing and revisit the mistakes that caused the market chaos in the first place.
But forgive me, but don't we need to hear what's going to be said on the 31st and then what we hear from the Office of Budget Responsibility as well? I mean, if they come out saying, well, actually, look, this can be funded, this is doable, we do forecast growth, then that would be a positive. I'm not saying they will, but if they did, that's a positive thing, surely.
Well, we certainly need the Office for Budget Responsibility report, and the government's contempt for their own Office for Budget Responsibility, their sacking of the Treasury Permanent Secretary on the Chancellor's first day in the job, their tension with the Bank of England, all of this stuff about showing contempt for the institutions which safeguard our economic credibility has contributed to the market reaction and to the spike in mortgage rates. So it's good that they've commissioned an OBR report. But what really matters here is their own policies. And all the indications are that they're now panicking because of the market reaction to what they announced a couple of weeks ago, and that panic will result in deep cuts in public services. So, you know, in what world can it be right to, first of all, spook the markets through a completely unnecessary mini-budget that they didn't have to do, and then to react to it by saying, and because we've spooked the markets, we're now going to cut your public services. We're going to make people, for example, on NHS waiting lists, or children at school, or people who need police on the streets, pay the cost for ministers' own mistakes. That's not right. They should revisit the mistakes they made in the first place, rather than trying to compensate them for them by making the public pay for what they've done.
We've got to be a bit careful with the language, haven't we? I mean, you just said that the mini-budget was completely unnecessary. Well, I mean, surely everyone disagrees with that. Surely. At this time of economic crisis, something was necessary. It might not have been the right budget, but something needed to be done, didn't it, with so many millions of people facing an economic crisis?
Well, the key thing that needed to be done was the energy price freeze that we caused for all summer, but that had been announced 2 weeks before. The markets were not spooked because of the freeze on energy prices. And intervention to help consumers and businesses with energy prices is being done by governments around the world right now. Markets understand that when faced with huge increases in energy prices, such as those that were announced by Ofgem back in August, the government had to intervene. I mean, by the way, Liz Truss fought and won her leadership election saying that she was against doing this, that she was against handouts and had to do a U-turn on it, but it was the right U-turn to do. But that's not what spooked the markets. What spooked the markets and caused the big spike in mortgage rates was the intervention on the 23rd of September. And that wasn't necessary to do. It was done in a very ideological way because Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng have wanted to do this kind of thing for many years. And it's that not the energy price intervention, which has really caused the economic chaos that we're seeing right now.
OK, I just want to ask you about IndyRef 2. We've got the Supreme Court hearing over the next couple of days. We've had Nicola Sturgeon saying that she'll take the next election as a de facto Indy poll decision. But there are rumours swirling that there could be a deal done between Labour and the SNP. Is that true?
No, it's not, and I don't know where such rumours would come from. We don't want any deals with the SNP. And when it comes to Scotland, what we want is the Scottish Government to focus for once on governing the country. 1 in 7 Scots are on NHS waiting lists. And when it comes to education, the Scottish Government don't even submit all the data now to the international studies. So worried are they by the record? There's been a fiasco over ferries to the islands. There are important issues for the Scottish Government to take care of. And this is not the time for another referendum, for the SNP to continue trying to keep the constitutional issue on the boil. It's time for some government in Scotland. But there is a prospect of change for people in Scotland, because with Labour doing better, with Labour having a real chance of governing next time, if people in Scotland really want change, they can vote Labour in the hope that they can get a change of government that really will address those issues in the future.